Well, welcome to the Dashboard Dojo, or welcome back to the Dashboard Dojo. So glad to have you here. We are off of a fantastic week. Dreamforce was a big week last week. Be curious if any of you that are here today were out in San Francisco last week for the conference. I know Daniel was, but I'm sure others of you on the call were out there as well. Maybe you could use the hand raise feature if that's enabled. So Nicole was there, Douglas, great. So today in the dojo, we're going to talk about the Winter 23 feature release, which has already started. Salesforce spreads the releases out across 3 weekends. So that'll finish in the middle of October. I think it's the 17th of October. So we'll talk about the Winter 23 features, and then we'll also talk about the reporting roadmap that came out of Dreamforce. So there was one session where they specifically talked about roadmap. It was a little bit of a blend of Winter 23 plus upcoming stuff, but I've separated it out here for today's session. So again, if you're just joining us, welcome to the Dashboard Dojo. So excited to have you here today to talk about Winter 23 and the upcoming roadmap. Before we get started, just thought to say thank you. We somehow have slogged through 2 years of Dashboard Dojo sessions. Probably the biggest thank you is to Kyle Shagnon, who's on the call. Thank you so much for doing this, helping make this happen, Kyle.
Of course. I'm excited to pass this milestone.
Yeah. So it was on Friday. Our first session in the dojo was September 23rd, 2020, and I called it Fun with Filters. And we've come a long way from there. So we have over 30 hours of dojo recordings now, including one of the ones from the summer, which is relevant to today. The summer release was just jam-packed with stuff for reports and dashboards. So if you haven't looked at that, you can find the dojo recordings easily on the Dashboard Dojo site. There's a tab across the top, or a button across the top called recordings, and you can just scroll through. There's also a tag cloud there where you can look through them. So if it's your first time to the Dashboard Dojo, welcome. I spent almost 3 years in Japan and really enjoyed visiting dojos around the country, and just love this idea of a place where people of different abilities can learn together and share ideas. So thank you for being part of this. All right. So we'll just do a quick introduction, just talk through the topics for today. We don't have any upcoming OpFocus events that I know of, but we do have some training coming up, and we'll talk about the next 2 dojo topics that we have scheduled. Please go ahead and use the chat to ask questions. Kyle and I can try to monitor it along the way in today's webinar. So again, welcome to the Dashboard Dojo. My name is David Carnes. I'm the founder and chairman of OpFocus. I'm very honored to be a Salesforce MVP. And like I said, I'm just back from Dreamforce 2022. This is one of the sessions, and it was before the session. And what was crazy about that session was the room actually filled in so much more, and it got so hot in there. I think there were a few rows of folks standing in the back, and then the folks sitting along the side. And it was really, really great fun. But I thought to get a photo of the session before we started. So OpFocus, who's our sponsor, we're a consulting firm. We work with SaaS companies, so software companies, to help optimize their revenue operations. And we're in our 17th year somehow working on this amazing platform. All right, so before we dive into Winter 23, I just thought to share that a little bird at Dreamforce told me that somewhere along the way this year, very quietly, the number of report and dashboard subscriptions was upped from 5 to 7 per user. And this is probably the #1 request I've heard since Lightning subscriptions were released. People said, what do you mean it's only 5? So we had a different model. Essentially, there was a pool in Classic where you could have 200 in an enterprise org, and there was a certain limit per day. Well, instead of doing an org limit in Lightning, they switched to an individual user limit, which was 5. So this limit is now up to 7. And I just went right into an org and confirmed that you can get 7. You can't get 8, but you can get 7. And this is true for both reports and dashboards. So interestingly, this is probably one of the first times I've seen, every now and then you'll see something in the documentation that isn't up to date. And this is one of them, that for both reports and dashboard subscriptions, it talks about the number of subscriptions being limited to 5. So that is no longer true. So it's now 7. And interestingly, one of the Winter 23 features we're going to talk about actually allows you to have more than the 7. So you can go even further than the 7 reports and 7 dashboards if you take advantage of this new Winter 23 feature. All right, so let's dive into what we're going to talk about. So Winter 23 Slack is really the big thing that's been released. I believe it's already available. I didn't get, unfortunately, a Slack org and a Salesforce org set up. I think MW is probably Mitch. Yeah, it is Mitch. So Mitch, to your point in the chat, you can subscribe other users. There is a permission that allows you to subscribe other people. There is a, you know, and I'll just open it up just because I know everybody should know about this. So if we go to bit.ly.report_permissions, I know you've heard me talk about this blog article before. Excuse me. But this blog article, I'll just throw it into the chat for report permissions. If you scroll down through, there are some permissions you may not have, Mitch, where you can subscribe others. So you can add recipients. You're probably an admin in your org, so I think you should already be able to do this. But if you're not an admin in the org, you might want to ask an admin to give you these profile permissions that I've outlined in this blog article. All right, so back to our list of stuff we're going to talk about. So the Slack integration, they called it the CRM Analytics for Slack app, but you don't have to pay for the CRM Analytics license. This is a free license. It's available to all. If you are using Slack and you have Salesforce, you can install this integration for Slack, which allows your users to browse, search, view, and share Lightning reports and dashboards. And also they can subscribe. And interestingly, in the documentation, I saw that this amount is over and above the number of subscriptions available within the org itself. So we just talked about the number of subscriptions going from 5 to 7. This apparently, from what I see in the documentation, that it's over and above. The other 4 Winter 23 release features are the ability to view the custom report type joins. This is something that I saw right away. You know, it's like with joins, with report types, that first step when you go to create a new report, it's really hard to know what the heck you're going to be reporting on, right? Because there are about 75 or so standard report types. There's really no clue what the joins are for those. And then for custom report types, it all depends on who built it and what they chose. But they're going to give us a nice visualization of what those joins are so that we can sort of better understand what we're getting ourselves into in that first step when you create a new report. We'll talk about search filtering in the new Analytics Home tab. We'll talk about mobile enhanced reports. This is a beta feature. There's even more coming in the spring release on the mobile analytics that I think we should be aware of. And then finally, there was a beta in the summer that you could request Salesforce enable. So on the new custom report type selection screen, they allowed us to say, I want to see report types with this object. Now we can actually specify fields. So we'll take a look at that. And then we'll step into the report and dashboard roadmap. All right, so that felt like a big mouthful. I'll try to calm down and just talk more smoothly going forward. Oh, you know what? I think I meant to ask a question here. Kyle, what was our question that I was going to ask here?
Oh, it was what feature are you most looking forward to?
No, so we're not doing the poll yet.
Oh.
So we'll go through the features first before the poll, but was there something above that on the list? Okay, how about, you know what it is? I remember now. How many of you have played with any of these features? Maybe if you raise your hand, that'd just be interesting to hear. So Nicole's played with them. I saw one other hand go up and I scrolled too fast. Okay, so Tammy, Jocelyn, Douglas, awesome. You can play with the new features, and let's actually talk about how you do that. So you can play with them before they go live. So Winter 23, for most of us, isn't live yet. It'll be live in 2.5 weeks. So before every release, the admin team comes up with a nice graphic that says key dates for Winter 23. The actual go live is centered around these 3 weekends here. And we can see it's already started. These are some of the largest, oldest orgs that are upgraded in early September. The majority of orgs are really toward the end of this release window. But October 7th is the next window. So we've got another week, just over a week for that. And then this is saying the 14th. For some reason, I had it in my head the 17th, but that makes more sense that it be a Saturday or a Friday night for the actual go live. But so once we know the winter release dates, then we sort of work backwards from there. So entire 2 months before then is when the winter 23 pre-release orgs are available. So almost 2 months before each release, we can actually sign up for a trial org and just play with it. I have one of those set up now using Firefox, and I can tell that this is a pre-release org because it's got a limited number of days in the trial. This isn't a guarantee that all the features are fully baked, but it's a way to get in and play with stuff. So we'll look at some of the features here in this pre-release org today. So usually a week or so after they introduce the pre-release org, they have the release notes for the org. So a lot of us that love to sort of tinker with this stuff, will sign up for the pre-release org on the day that it's released and start tweeting out new things that we see, trying to describe them and understand them, a week before the release notes come out. And then within the release notes, you often, sort of get more clarification on what the features are. There is a window when your sandbox preview starts. And for those of you that perhaps have a full sandbox, you might benefit, or even for a partial copy sandbox where you have data in your sandbox, you could get to work building with the new report and dashboard features well before the release actually goes live. So you could try things out, maybe take advantage of some of them, build some things that you might then push to production when the release goes live. Okay, so I think, Kyle, you've shared this in the chat, this admin release countdown link. For the release notes themselves, so for every release, there's 500-600 pages of release notes. What I always do is go ahead and take a look at this. I'll go find the Winter 23 release notes. Literally, I just search for Salesforce Winter 23 release notes, and you can always find it. This is a page in the documentation, essentially, that Salesforce maintains. Under a section called Analytics, there's a section called Reports and Dashboards. Here are the features that we're going to go through today. It's interesting that there are 6 of them here, and I think I'm going to talk about 5 of them. That's odd. But before we move on, if you missed a release, like the summer release, it was actually much more jam-packed than I think of a summer release, sort of going back through the last 15 years. But you can, up in the top right corner of this page in documentation, you can go back quite a few releases. You can also download a PDF if you'd like. So just taking a quick look in the org. So I talked about this page. So this is the actual release notes. And if we dig into that section under Analytics, Reports and Dashboards, we can go find the page on Slack, for example. We can see the warning right up top. New workflow rules are blocked in Winter 23. Poor old workflow rules. They served us well for so long. But you've got the nice write-up, and they also often have additional details down below that might be relevant to the item. So sometimes this is the only way you can view something, because some of the beta features, it might take weeks to get enabled. So this may be the only way to see the feature. That's going to be true for a few things today. All right, so that's preparing for a new release. So let's talk about the big one. So reports and dashboards in Slack. I think a lot of us are excited about this one. And I'm concerned that this may cause confusion. So there is an app that you can essentially enable. It's called the CRM Analytics for Slack app. And just the name CRM Analytics, what that connotes is a paid add-on to Salesforce for that BI functionality, that business intelligence functionality for Salesforce. But you don't need to pay for this. This is a free thing. So an admin would essentially need to set this up, and you're probably going to need both a Salesforce admin and a Slack admin. But once this is installed, all Salesforce users can, from within Slack, browse, search, view, share, and subscribe to both reports and dashboards. They can see their favorites, they can see recents, they can also see snapshots of both charts and dashboards directly in Slack. So this is pretty exciting for a lot of companies that have sort of gone whole hog into Slack. We have the ability to also import existing subscriptions if you wish. So you may have already set up a subscription in, let's say, within Salesforce for reports. You can pull that subscription into Slack if you wish. What I see, and is a little muddy in the release notes, is you have the ability to subscribe to up to 7 more reports and dashboards directly in Slack. So you can see within the release notes here, I've got the subscribe to Lightning reports and dashboards. So this is subscribing directly from within Slack. And then down below, it says there's another feature where you can import and add recipients to Lightning report and dashboard subscriptions. So these are the subscriptions that already exist in Salesforce, and you're essentially pulling them in. This is how I'm interpreting that this is additive and not one replaces the other. So pretty exciting development here. And has anybody on the call played with this yet? I believe that this was actually released in August, the CRM Analytics for Slack app, that this came out sort of on a different schedule than the winter 23, though they're formally announcing it in winter 23. So I don't know if anybody's raised their hand here for that. So Chris asked the question, when do you know when Salesforce switched to a 3-day cadence for refreshing full sandboxes? I don't know that. I remember it being 30 days for many, many years. I guess I'm sorry that I don't know the answer to that one. Sherry asked the question, do you have an example of this in Slack? Gosh, I wish I did. I was at Dreamforce last week, saw this at Dreamforce, and just pinged our own internal head of operations yesterday saying, have you set this up yet? So it's all pretty new. Dwan James asked the question, so CRM Analytics used to be Tableau. There's actually 2 separate things, add-ons that Salesforce sells. So CRM Analytics was something that Salesforce sold as an add-on before they acquired Tableau. Tableau is incredibly powerful, allows you all kinds of visualizations, very much an enterprise quality business intelligence tool. That's why they spent $15 billion buying the company. CRM Analytics is something that you see within Salesforce. It allows you to report on data in Salesforce and also data outside of Salesforce. When Salesforce bought Tableau, the CRM Analytics team, that development team, rolled up under Tableau, but they're 2 separate purchases you can make. So if you think of one easy way to think of this is Tableau, you run and create and use the analytics outside of Salesforce. And with CRM Analytics, you're more likely to use that information inside Salesforce. So Douglas is asking the question, the CRM Analytics for Slack keeps having me sign in via Trailblazer account. This whole thing with Trailblazer accounts is very painful. If any of you have accounts to multiple Salesforce orgs and even multiple Trailblazer profiles, the whole thing about how these profiles persist across tabs within a browser can be a little bit painful. The best thing I can suggest, Douglas, is to open like a different browser. So if you're working in Chrome now, open Firefox or Safari, or whatever one you have access to, but something different, log into your production org, and then try to do what you're doing. It feels like it's getting confused between multiple accounts that you might have access to. All right, so great. So I feel like I'm letting you guys down. I don't have a demo of this. I just have this sort of not very exciting looking screenshot where you can see somebody's previews, and then you see the ellipsis to the right, and you can view details, view a snapshot you can share from here. I feel like this is not doing it justice. I had one other screenshot from Dreamforce that really didn't do it justice either. So stay tuned. I'll share more about this as I get it set up and can play with it. All right, so there are a handful of other updates from Winter 23. One of them is the ability to review a custom report type structure. So currently this only works for custom report types. So if I go to create a new report, this is the screen you see when you create a new report. You have to make that all important decision: which report type am I going to use? So most of these in this list here, in fact, nearly all of them are standard report types. If I were to click on any of these, I would not see these diagrams down here. But because this one is custom and this feature is enabled for custom report types, if I click on a custom report type down in the bottom right-hand corner in the details pane here, I can see the diagrams for the joins supporting this. Now, why is this important? Well, for years and years, we've just sort of blindly selected these report types, really having no clue what is the underlying join here. And the reality is that most of these are equi-joins, meaning that if I select this accounts with account teams, if an account doesn't have an account team, I won't see the account. If the account team is somehow orphaned, which is probably not possible, I won't see that either. Right, so you have to have at least one of both to see that information. Whereas this one here is set up with a left outer join, which is where the words with or without come in. So we're going to see accounts with or without opportunities. And I can actually see that there's a left outer join in this diagram between accounts and opportunities. And then once again, between opportunities and activities. So there's a left outer join. I'll see all the opportunities, and their activities, whether or not there are any activities. So there's no setup required for this. This is, this is just going to appear in your org. There's one other detail where you can hover over the little eyes and you can see that. So let's go take a quick look at that in our org. So if I go to the reports tab, and I don't see it here, there's no place here that I see it, but where I see it is when I go click the new report button. Now for let's choose opportunities with products, for example. If I click on this, we have this detail pane over here on the right, and I can scroll down. I can see reports created by me, reports created by others using this report type. And if I scroll down, I can see all the objects used in the report type, but I cannot see a diagram. It doesn't work on standard standard report types. However, I do have a custom report type created. And if I select that, so I created a custom report type, didn't create any reports. Nobody's created any reports, but that's fine. If I scroll down a little further, I can see that diagram. And then just note that you do have the little letter I over here, and you can hover over and it says it's a left join. So this may be the first time I've ever seen in Salesforce acknowledge that there is a thing called a left join. So we usually call them left outer joins, but it gives us a nice summary. Each account record may or may not have related asset records. So this is a really important step in the history of Salesforce reporting, to acknowledge that this is this is a real thing. I really wish we could get this same diagram for all these standard report types. So I don't have a timeline on that. All right, so that's reviewing custom report types. The analytics home tab came out as a beta in the summer release. This is still in beta. It's going to probably be in beta for a little while, but that doesn't mean it's not an easy thing to use, easy thing to set up, and just a great thing to take advantage of. So how do you turn on the new analytics home tab? It's a checkbox in setup. So an admin needs to turn this on. So if I go back into an org and I go under setup, as a sysadmin, if I go to setup, feature settings, analytics, reports and dashboards, report and dashboard settings, down in the bottom of that section, I've got unified analytics home, enable the unified experience for analytics home. There is one other place where you can actually turn this on. It's under the CRM analytics setup. So a lot of us, if you don't pay for that, you don't see this in your org, but there is a settings section here, and there is another checkbox, enable the unified experience for analytics home. So that's in our org. And once that's been enabled, there's a tab that you can add to your apps. You can go up to the waffle up here in the top left corner. You can search on the word analytics and you can find that tab. You can add that tab. When you go to that tab, it's basically pulling in all of your reports, all of your dashboards, all of your report folders, all of your dashboard folders, all of your report favorites, all of your dashboard favorites, and pulling them into one place. Now, why is this meaningful? Well, who the heck wants two tabs when you can get the job done with one tab, right? For most of your users, they're not actively creating reports and dashboards. They could just get by with one tab. If you use CRM Analytics, that add-on from Salesforce, that content is also visible here. And we'll see it in this org, because I think this org has CRM Analytics licenses enabled. So that's where we see things like templates, data sets, lenses, components, which are not words that we use, even apps. We don't use those words within reports and dashboards. So if you just have reports and dashboards, you'll see all items, dashboards, reports, and folders as your choices. Now, this Winter 23 feature that I'm sort of going on about is the ability to search really deeply for things. We can search based on a word like the word pipeline, and I should spell it correctly. And I get a bunch of shortlist search results. If I go ahead and hit enter, I can see more stuff down below, and I can see reports. Looks like no folders and no dashboards came up, but I see a bunch of reports. And if I wish, I can further refine them by clicking on dashboards. And that just confirms I don't have any. If I click on reports, now I can further refine these by saying, I just want to see pipeline reports created by Larry. And I literally could type in or Julie. I can just, oh, actually, there's no Julie in this org. So I don't have a lot of names in this particular org, but the default is anybody, but you can further refine that by which user you wish to say. Now, similarly, you could say last modified on, and you can put a custom range in. I was working on this in April 2022, so I could put a custom range in there. Or who was it created by? And again, you could search for Larry or whomever among your users. And then when was it created? And again, you could put in a custom range. So all of these filters combine to what's showing down here within the search. So this is very, very powerful search. It's much more flexible than what we have currently on the reports tab or the dashboards tab. I have no knowledge or suspicion that the reports tab or dashboards tabs will go away, but I can see a really nice use case for just whittling it down to one tab for a lot of your users. This is already available, and I think it's pretty great. Some things that are sort of out there in the future for this tab, the ability to create collections. So that's not available now for reports, dashboards, and folders. However, I know it's something that's being talked about in the roadmap for this. And what a collection would be, I could have my my sales ops year-over-year collection. And I could have 2 dashboards and a few reports sort of just put into a collection to quickly find that set of reporting, which is kind of cool. So the other thing you have access to here are your favorites. Favorites is a personal setting. Each user can have up to 200 favorites, which can be reports, dashboards, report folders, dashboard folders, and so on. All right. So we have enhanced browsing and search capabilities, and this is being further refined in Winter 23. I think this will stay beta for a while. I think this, I don't think it's fully GA yet, GA being generally available, but it's, I think it's pretty powerful.
Sorry, before we move on, Christy had a question on if you can enable that just for some users or profiles, or if it has to be kind of a broad.
Absolutely. So great question. I'm glad you asked it. So when you turn that on, apparently what happens, so when you check that box, the tab becomes available to users. And I checked it with a standard user profile. And that tab is essentially default on, which means somebody could add it in to their view. But what you could do is go into the profiles and you could essentially turn that off. So just to show you that quickly, if I go into, and I think I want to look in this org, and if we go right back into the setup, I'll go under users, I'll go into profiles, and I'll just pick a profile that's in this org. I'll pick the standard user profile. You know what? I'm going to pick a custom profile. I'm going to do it in this other org. I'm sorry, just sort of a specific reason why I want to do that. I just want to make sure with custom profiles that it's not already enabled or that it's not already turned off is what I mean. So if I come in here, I've never touched this profile called custom marketing profile. If I come in here and if I go to object settings, so you could go profile to profile and restrict it. So we see the analytics tab here, and that's not confusing that there are two analytics tabs. One of them that's on, one of them that's off. I think it's this second one. So that's really not confusing that there are two analytics tabs now in the system. All right, well, that's not going to help our cost. So great question. We should be able to go through profile by profile and restrict their ability to see the tab if you don't want them to use the tab. All right, so next Winter 23 feature is enhanced reports on mobile. So if you have not played with the Salesforce mobile, actually, I'm curious, could we do a show of hands, like who has played with Salesforce mobile app for reports and dashboards specifically? So Tracy has, awesome. Bonnie has, Adriana, awesome. I encourage you to play with this. I encourage you to train your users. So thanks, Mark, for also throwing your hand up. I encourage you to train your users. The mobile app is, I think, a lot more powerful than people realize. It's already more powerful for reports and dashboards than people realize. This is now making life better with this. And I think there's even something else coming in the spring release related to mobile. There are features that don't exist in regular reports and dashboards, and just the ability to pin a report within the mobile. There's a way, just sort of different things we can do. The real estate on your mobile device is pretty small, so keep that in mind. This is partly why they're doing the enhanced reports, where the columns will appear a little bit nicer. So this is available October 17th. This enhanced thing. It's available for iOS or Android. You can enable the beta on your device. So each individual user would basically go into their settings, and in the release notes that Kyle will throw into the chat, the release notes for this, if you follow through, you can actually see the steps for going on your phone and enabling this once it's released October 17th. The one thing with reports in the mobile is it's portrait view only. So you're not like turning your device. I've got one of the iPhone Pros, and if I turned it sideways, it's just going to stay in portrait view. So what are these enhanced optimal views? It says optimize your reports for consumption on mobile devices without reconfiguring the report formats. This is probably the biggest thing that I would have said if you talked to me 6 months ago about, we're thinking about giving our reports to our leadership team. I'd say, what, get rid of most of the columns because of the amount of real estate space that you have. You might want to take some great report you have that has 35 columns, and you might want to sort of get rid of a bunch of the columns just to make it easier to work with. I think what this release is doing is just sort of taking us a nice step closer to just being able to use the reports as we've created them. All right, so that's a mouthful. Another thing that's coming, this is an extension of the work that was put out in the summer release. When you go to create a new report, you can choose currently already from the summer release I can filter the report types by objects. And in the winter release, they're giving us one more step where I can filter by fields as well. So the idea behind this is, I know I need to report on the XYZ ratio field in my system. Well, that's a custom field. I have no idea which report type it's on. I may not even know what object it's on, but this will allow us to say, show me report types that actually have that field. So this extends that summer 22 beta feature, which allowed us to search by objects. It's allowing us to very specifically also search by fields and go find custom report types. And you can filter by up to 20 fields. So you could say, you know what, I'm doing reporting on fundraising in my NPSP org, and I need these 5 fundraising related fields. What report types have these 5 fields? Right now, you need to submit a case to enable the beta. That should be true because it's still a beta in the winter release. So when this comes out, we'll still need to submit a case to Salesforce support. You'll probably need to provide them with your org ID and say, I'd like this feature to be enabled in this particular org ID. I can show you this feature from the summer release. I don't have the winter version of it, but if we come in to create a new report, you see here that's a filter button over on the right. And right now I can do it based on objects. But if I go ahead and select this, it says show me report types with these objects. So when it comes out in winter 23, it's going to add that ability to search on fields. What's kind of interesting here is this long list of objects, including many you've never heard of that are in your system. It just goes and goes and goes. And if I want to search on the target object, which is a custom object in my org, I can see. So two things to note about this. Number one is that this filter also is dependent on which item you've selected over here. In the summer release, Salesforce introduced a recently used default. So I need to select all, and my filter is still applied, and I can see that there is a report type called targets. I think this is where a lot of people are going to fall down with this feature, is that they'll do what I just did, which is you go to create a new report type, you go search for your filter, and you're so excited to see the results that you don't even realize that you may not have recently used that custom report type or standard report type, so it won't even show up. But just keep that in mind. All right, before we move on, of this handful of features, Kyle, could you launch the poll? I'm curious, what features are you most excited about from winter 23? So we talked about reports and dashboards in Slack. We talked about reviewing custom report type structure, those joins, the little diagrams, filtering on the Analytics Home tab, enhanced reports on mobile, and then filtering the custom report types by fields. What are you most excited about in winter 23?
We'll keep it up for 5 or so more seconds, so get your answers in. All right.
All right, so reviewing the custom report type structure, that makes me very happy, understanding the joins. And then the Analytics Home tab, that makes me very happy. And then filtering custom report types by field. All right, so I think this is probably a tough choice. I think it's super cool that that's the winner. If you're new to an organization, that last one is gold, right? If you're brand new to an organization, if your org has 1,000 objects in it, and probably along with that 1,000 report types, you may just really have a hard time finding which report types to select that'll give you the data you want. So this ability to filter by up to 20 fields at a time is pretty cool to really zero in. All right, so Bonnie mentioned she's having an issue trying to pull a report, getting an error. You can't summarize an invalid column using mobile. I'm not sure where that error comes from, Bonnie. We're going to do a session two dojos from now on mobile. I'm going to make a note of this, and I'll see if I can get an answer. Maybe I can shoot it out to you before then if I can find the answer for that one. All right, so let's shift gears. I want to talk about Dreamforce for a few minutes. So Dreamforce, there were, I guess, 40,000 of us, which is about 1/4 to 1/5 as many as were there in 2019 and 2018. It felt like a lot of people. I guess we've all been wearing masks and sort of hidden away for years. So it was pretty cool. This session was led by Ankita Dutta, who's the product manager. She's the director of product management for reports and dashboards. And then the principal engineer who's designing a lot of the stuff that we keep looking at in the Dōjō, Raghav. The two of them are standing up front. They were awesome. This was a really quick session, but they just nailed it for the stuff they went through. So I want to talk about what they talked about for upcoming roadmap stuff. All right, so I was standing in the back taking pictures, and this is why they're a little lopsided, these next few shots, but I thought to just show you the actual slides that they presented. So this is from Ankita and Raghav's presentation. So they talked about their roadmap, and their goal is to provide real-time visual reporting that supports tracking, reacting, and planning. So this is what they're thinking about. So for reports, they're talking about filtering report types by objects and fields. So that's part of the Winter 23. That's in motion beta, and it'll come out most likely generally available GA in the spring or perhaps the summer. For dashboard enhancements, they're talking about adding rich text components and then image components to dashboards. So right now we have 11 types of components that we can put onto a dashboard. Actually, that was one of the that was one of the Dreamforce sections I did last week. So at Dreamforce, I did a deep dive into dashboard components. We went through all 11 components. Well, now they're talking about having 13 component types to put on your dashboards. So they're also talking about allowing up to 30 components on the dashboard. Right now, the limit is 20. They're also talking about increasing the limit of dashboard filters from 3 to 5. Now, for this set of enhancements that I just talked about, the dashboard ones, they're all going to be aimed at the unlimited edition. So for OpFocus, we use Enterprise Edition. Enterprise is used by the majority of Salesforce customers worldwide. Larger organizations and others that have specific needs for unlimited edition feature, will often pay more for unlimited edition. Every now and then features are just aimed at unlimited edition, and these are examples of them. So I thought it was interesting. It feels like it's been a while since features were added that were edition specific. That's what's coming with the dashboards. So we already talked about Slack and mobile. They're talking about accessing reports and dashboards in Slack, checking out the new enhanced mobile app. There's already been a lot of work done with mobile, and more is coming even through the spring release in February. And then, really just taking advantage of all your report and dashboard and CRM analytics items, content on this new analytics tab. So they're also talking about the subscription limits. So not only the move to 7 that's already happened, but they're looking at ways to go even beyond the 7 per user for both reports and dashboards. So some of these I've already mentioned, but the rich text and image components, these little flags here with the orange, these are actually from the Idea Exchange, where people have actually voted on things. If you've never voted on ideas, or if you've never been to the idea site, if we jump over to the org and we come in here and we go to, I believe it's ideas.salesforce.com, and you can log in and you can vote on stuff. So you can search for stuff, but there are basically, the engineering team watches this, and you can look through. You can see the points. If there's something that you really need in your organization, you could send an email out with the URL to that idea and say, could everybody please vote on this? And there'd be a little surge in the number of points, and it might be more visible to the team. So there's no problem asking your friends to vote on something if it's meaningful. But that's where these little flags have come, and they're showing the points that they reached: 9,000, 11,000, 10,000, 24,000. And this is where these things end up on the roadmap for development. So we talked about the better filtering, the top 5 top level filters. Right now we can do 3 atop a dashboard. The big one that they're talking about for next summer, the summer 23 release, is the ability to reassign dashboard ownership. So where that comes into play, a lot of companies like OpFocus, our Salesforce org is pretty old. It's been around since I think it was 08, 07 when we started this particular org. Some of the team members who created dashboards and are maybe the running user of the dashboards, they're not active users in our system anymore. That essentially breaks things on your dashboards, but we have the ability to reassign ownership so it's not just running user, this is actually the ownership of the dashboards. I think this is going to be great. I mentioned increasing the number of components to 30. That's a very busy dashboard, but if you have a lot of metrics and they're pretty condensed, I'm not a huge fan of scrolling and scrolling and scrolling on a tall dashboard, and going from 20 to 30 is a 50% increase. But we do have the ability to have smaller components. So maybe this is intended for people with smaller components. Even if you don't have the unlimited edition where this is going to come out for, you still could create what's called an app page. So there are 3 types of pages. You have home pages, app pages, and record pages. You might use an app page and you could put 2 dashboards on an app page, and you could get above the current limit of 20 by essentially showing 2 dashboards, or you could show 3. You could keep going. The other thing that they talked about, which is a little vague, is improved formatting of the dashboards. I think any of that stuff is welcome, just the ability to do more formatting within our dashboards. All right, so what else? So we've got the mobile enhancements that are coming out in the spring 23 release. So this looks like a nice screenshot of what's to come. So they've improved the mobile reports experience, reimagined and optimized for all of your on-the-go data needs. So mobile optimized, natively rendered summary and tabular reports. So that's great. And they're saying it's 5 times faster. So that's not going to help Bonnie, because Bonnie's getting an error. Bonnie, I'm sorry to hear about your error. Let's figure out an answer to that. But 5 times faster sounds pretty good to me for getting data visible in the reports on mobile. I have one more slide. Yeah, so a little bit more coming on the analytics tab. So this will finally become GA, or generally available, in the summer 23 release. So that'll be next June. So it already is a brand new browsing experience. We can do recents and favorites. I think what will be added over the next couple of releases is that ability to create collections. So I mentioned that earlier. You could add reports and dashboards to a collection and then essentially make that available. Beyond all this, I did have the pleasure of meeting with the report and dashboard leadership earlier this week, and there's even more cool stuff coming further out on the roadmap. So they very much listen to input they get, especially from that ideas.salesforce.com site. If there are features you need in your organization, write them up, put in a screenshot or a mock-up into ideas, share it with other people. I think most other people are willing to vote on report and dashboard ideas. And there's no shame saying to your 100 users in your company, everybody please vote on this. So you get a little swell of votes and it catches their eye. They are absolutely looking at that to determine what are the features in the roadmap. All right, so for a quick recap, we talked about Slack and the CRM analytics for Slack. We talked about the ability to view custom report type joins, and I'm really hopeful that that'll be true of standard report types as well. Ability to see that diagram and understand how are these objects connected in this report type. One thing that I didn't mention that is not, it's not something you'd think about right away. If you're using within your custom report types, if you're using the add fields via related lookup, you can add fields from up to 60 objects and pull them into your custom report type. Incredibly powerful, one of the most powerful and least known features in report types. If you don't know what I'm talking about, check out on the Dashboard Dojo, we have a session on custom report types, and we go into that special feature. That is not revealed by the diagram. So I think I still have the, probably still have the diagram. Well, even if I don't. So if we come right back in here and we go to this accounts with or without, and we can see the maybe I need to do it in this org. Okay, this is the one. So we can see our diagram here. So I was in a summer 22 org, and this is the winter 23 org. But you see this diagram here, it doesn't show you any information about fields added via related lookup. So you could pull in stuff from 60 objects, and that's not represented here. This is basically, this is the primary object of the customer report type, and you can see the 1, 2, or 3 child objects in that customer report type. You don't see the objects that are related via lookup. That doesn't appear. So I don't want to like sugarcoat and say that that's there. It's not there. So we talked about search filtering and analytics home, incredibly powerful. We talked about the enhanced reports in mobile and the ability to filter customer report types by fields. These are things we're going to have to teach our end users. We're going to have to teach our end users about all this stuff. So, you know, whether you are in charge of enablement or somebody else, we've got to get the word out because people don't sort of find things on their own. We also talked about the report and dash roadmap. So I'm very excited to see that stuff. Before we wrap up today, I want to mention that there is a new certification. So if you sort of been thinking that the admin cert is sort of a huge cliff to climb, this new cert came out last week, I believe. It's really good. It's $75. It's 40 questions. You need a 62% to pass, and 15% of the cert is on reports and dashboards. They only have 3 answers per question. So it's not like which 3 of the following 5. There's only 3 answers you can choose from. So that's helpful. I thought it was perfectly about 1/3 to 1/2 of sort of the stature of the admin cert. So I actually was watching a soccer game on Wednesday last week, and I just thought, you know what, I think I should take this and just see what it's like. So this is really intended for anybody that's new to the Salesforce community or hasn't gone down the path of getting an admin cert. It's a really good first step, and it's cheaper. If you don't pass, retakes are free. So definitely encourage people to go down this path. Certified Salesforce Associate. I think you put a link in the chat, Kyle.
Yes.
Awesome. I'm back in the classroom November 7th to the 11th, and that's for our administration course. We'll also sort out the dates for both classes in Q1 of 2023. And then we have 2 upcoming Dōjō sessions. Wednesday, October 12th, we'll do conditional formatting in Salesforce reports and dashboards. And then on November 2nd, we'll be back in the Dōjō to dig into mobile reporting. So I'll have to figure out an emulator for that to log in to the mobile org. It's pretty cool what we can do. So that's available for both the iOS devices and Android devices. But I'm going to pull up and see if there's any more chat. I'm sorry I didn't pay attention to the chat quite as much today. I changed the resolution of my machine, and it's so funny that the chat takes up half the window. Any questions you want to call out, Kyle?
There was
So
Tracy had one about with custom reports, why does it revert to a hierarchy? They have to go into reports in the dashboard and edit every time they refresh the dashboard. Is there a workaround?
I'm gonna have to scroll and find. Oh, here we go. Why in custom reports does it revert to a hierarchy? We have to go into reports and edit every time we refresh the dashboard. Tracy, we might have to take that one offline. I'm so sorry, just to understand it more fully. What it sounds like you're saying is that the filtering is getting lost that you might have set in the underlying report, but we'll have to take that one offline to recreate it, see if we can come up with a workaround. Adriana asked, do you think filtering by fields could help us figure out where a certain field is used and where we might have deleted a pick list value to know what needs to be updated? No, I don't think that's going to help us. I don't think that, I think we can search by field names, but not by pick list values. It's my understanding of that feature. Kathy asked about the dog. I put him in the crate, the puppy. He's huge. I should have gone and grabbed Toby. He's very active, very fluffy. All right, so Donna's excited about the certification. Great. Very cool. I'm going to stop my share and actually say hello and look at people. I'm excited for the upcoming Dōjō sessions that we have. It's amazing to start our 3rd year, Kyle. We're getting older and wiser doing this. But if anybody has any additional questions, we can grab them, or we can also say, hope to see you next time. Please go ahead and sign up for the next session on October 12th on conditional formatting. Very cool. All right, I don't see any other questions. I'm going to have to follow up with Tracy on hers, but thank you, Kyle.
Of course, always a pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
Okay,
have a great rest of your day.